Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Amnesty International's annual death penalty report reveals that during the course of 2015, more people were executed than at any other point in the last quarter of a century. UN Special Envoy to Syria, Staffan de Mistura, commends progress being made in Syria as the cessation of hostilities continues to hold. Israel emphasizes it would not accept any arrangement in Syria that would allow for Iran or Hezbollah to have any kind of presence on the Golan Heights. Amnesty International's annual death penalty report revealed that last year more people were executed than at any other point in the last quarter of a century, despite the fact that the majority of the world's countries have abolished state-sponsored executions. The dramatic surge in death penalties is blamed on three countries, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, who were responsible for almost 90% of the 1,634 people officially recorded as executed in 2015. Amnesty did not include executions from China, as the true extent of the number of people put to death remains as a state secret.
Iran, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Together, these three countries accounted for almost 90% of all the executions that we recorded in 2015, again excluding China.
In Saudi Arabia, executions rose by 76% last year. At least 158 people were put to death. Most were beheaded, but authorities also used firing squads and sometimes displayed executed bodies in public.
The Saudi Arabian authorities suggest that these executions are carried out to fight terror and safeguard security. But it's clear that they're also using the death penalty in the name of counter-terror to settle scores and crush dissidents.
Even though in most cases those executed are said to have committed terror-related offenses, Amnesty International said when looking into the actual cases, most are actually executed for other reasons.
For example, in Pakistan, most of the executions weren't of people who were convicted of terrorism-related offences. In Iran, we're concerned that the justification of combating extremism or terrorism is actually being used as a cover to target dissidents. So you've got to look at what the countries are actually doing as well as what they say they're doing.
Now, in other news, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry defended in an exclusive interview Russia's efforts against those who doubted the country would play a positive role in ending hostilities in the Middle East.
In the case of President Putin, he says that he is prepared to be part of the solution with respect to Syria. Now, everybody doubted whether Russia would play any constructive role whatsoever with respect to the cessation of hostilities. And we got a cessation of hostilities, notwithstanding.
Because they played a positive role.
Because they played a positive role.
You've also said, and the President said,
if they hadn't done that, if they hadn't played a constructive role, we would not have had an agreement with Iran.
Right.
If they hadn't played a constructive role, we would not have gotten the chemical weapons out of Syria, and they would be in the hands of ISIL today. And if they hadn't played a constructive role, we would not have gotten the cessation of hostilities or everybody at the table in Geneva.
Ahead of a new round of negotiations in Geneva, Kerry reiterated the United States' position in which Syrian President Bashar al-Assad would ultimately need to step down in order for peace to be achieved.
The war will not come to a complete ending, closure,
right,
if Assad, against the wishes of the opposition, unless there's some agreement that I'm not aware of that gets reached with the opposition somewhere in time, you can't end the war. Because the opposition will not end fighting because of what he is deemed to have done to their people, to the people of his country.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said he believes the Geneva talks may well produce a new Syrian government that would potentially include opposition, independents, and loyalists, but has rejected any idea of a transition of power, a fact that Syria's opposition has consistently rejected. The opposition demanded for the Geneva talks to result in a transitional governing body for the war-torn country that would not include President Bashar al-Assad. Meanwhile, UN Special Envoy to Syria, Staffan de Mistura, who has the ongoing talks in Geneva between the government and opposition delegations, commended during a meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow the progress being made in the war-torn country as the cessation of hostilities continues to hold.
One is the cessation of hostilities, which have been working thanks to a very effective system. And of course, there have been problems, but after 5 years of war, what would you expect?
De Mistura also praised Russia for its efforts in helping Syrian forces to recapture the ancient city of Palmyra from the Islamic State, a victory of President Bashar Assad backed by heavy Russian air support, which inflicted a significant blow to the extreme Muslim group, as the loss of Palmyra represents one of the biggest setbacks for the Islamic State since it declared a Muslim Caliphate in 2014 across both Iraq and Syria.
And I must say, I also want to make a point that Secretary General Ban Ki-moon did too. We are extremely pleased on how the indications came from the liberation of Palmyra, which has been a symbol of, for the whole international community, of what needs to be the beginning of freeing areas which are of international value, which we've been waiting for. So that is something that we need to acknowledge.
Reiterating Russia's position regarding the political process that would heal the deep wounds between the government and opposition in Syria, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stressed that Syria's fate should be only determined by its own people.
В конечном итоге все развязки кризиса можно искать только на основе того основополагающего принципа, который заложен в решениях Венской группы и в решениях Совета Безопасности, о том, что только сирийский народ может определять будущее своей страны.
In the midst of gains made by Russian-backed forces in Syria against the Islamic State, and relatively insignificant gains by the US-led coalition against the extreme Muslim group, US President Barack Obama convened his Joint Chiefs of Staff to discuss additional ways to combat the Islamic State in both Syria and Iraq.
We are working to make sure that we're accelerating the campaign against ISIL in Syria, in Iraq. ISIL continues to lose ground. Coalition forces recently severed the main highway between ISIL strongholds in Raqqa, Syria, and Mosul in Iraq. And we continue to take on their leadership, their financial networks, their infrastructure. We are going to squeeze them, and we will defeat them.
Now to a related matter, top Israeli defense officials in the course of meetings with their counterparts in both Moscow and Washington emphasized that Israel would not accept any arrangement in Syria that would allow for Iran or its Lebanese proxy Hezbollah to have any kind of presence on the Golan Heights. Israeli officials are growing increasingly optimistic regarding a political arrangement that would bring an end to the ongoing civil war in Israel's northern neighbor. A top Israeli defense official told TV7 that any kind of reality in Syria should take into account Israel's security concerns, and both Washington as well as Moscow are up to date regarding the worries of the Jewish state. The official pointed out that the international community has become obsessive about finding an immediate solution to the conflict in Syria, mainly because of the refugee crisis, the refugees who are flooding Europe, substantially increasing likelihood of starting a political process that would have international backing and will implement the will of world powers rather than adhering to the needs of Syria itself. Thank you for watching us. I'm Jonathan Hessen. Keep praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time.
In order to donate to TV7 Israel News, please follow these simple steps. First, press the Donate logo, located at the bottom left side of TV7 Israel News Facebook page, or on the Donate tab at the head of the page. Then insert the amount you'd like to donate, and fill in your credit card information. Just like this. And press Review Donation and continue. After reviewing your donation details, please press Donate to finalize your donation. That's it! Your donation is now complete, and an email with your donation details has been sent to your email address. You can also print your donation receipt by pressing the link here. Thank you for supporting TV7 Israel News.